The IPO has confirmed what we all know, and that is that on this vast continent, most of the immigrants come to the three eastern capitals, Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, and that forces up the house prices in those places.
Yeah, absolutely it does. I mean, Sydney's population at the turn of the century was just under 4 million. Melbourne's was 3.5 million. Now Melbourne's at about 5.3 million. Sydney's at about 5.4 million. We've had extraordinary growth. Obviously, Brisbane's grown incredibly quickly as well. And those things are all putting upward pressure on house prices. It's not just the prices, David. It's also the type of houses that have been built now. Most of the housing that's been supplied now, or the new housing that's been supplied or is forecast to be supplied, is apartments, and they tend to be small. 1 and 2 bedroom apartments dominate, and those aren't conducive to raising a family. They're not just expensive, but they're also too small. And let's be honest, you can't swing a cat in a lot of these places. And we mentioned last week that Australia is now looking at micro apartments. Well, if we get a proliferation of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, micro apartments, tiny houses, that's going to be hostile to the traditional family, because it's going to be very hard to raise a family of 4, for example, in one of these tiny apartments. And just to put some numbers around that, I mean, projections from the Urban Task Force for Sydney show that Sydney's dwelling composition is going to change from 55% in 2016 to 25% detached house. So 55% detached house in 2016 to 25% detached housing by 2057. And the quantity of apartments is going to rise from 30% of Sydney's total housing stock in 2016 to 50% by 2057. So effectively, Sydney's entire housing stock is going to shift from detached housing, dominance of detached housing with backyards, to apartments and then also townhouses. And that necessarily means it's going to be harder to raise a family, because they're not going to be conducive to raising a family, because there'll be a lot of this 1 and 2 bedroom stuff. And the houses that are left are going to become incredibly expensive, which is going to make it harder to have a family.